Isthis Veniceland, presented by Roxana Szymanska.
Demonstrators have taken to the waters of Venice's world-famous lagoon to protest against visiting cruise ships. Hundreds of protesters lit flares and blasted horns in a flotilla of small boats and traditional gondolas. The demonstrators are calling for an end to the big ships landing in the historic city. In high season, they can bring as many as 30,000 tourists a day.
The aims and objectives of this documentary are to raise awareness of the situation in Venice with cruise ships and find out people's opinions, to see flood of thousands of tourists every day who come on cruise ships from around the world, destroying the historic city centre, how community and residents fight and protest against the cruise ships, what damage large cruise ships leave to the environment and the lagoon city, and finally present several solutions and recommendations for Venice to deal with a mass tourists. To create this documentary, different research methods were used. Qualitative primary research. In the beginning of February, 2 interviews had placed on the internet. I had opportunities to ask questions and heard 2 different opinions about visitors' experience during their stop on a cruise ship's holidays in Venice. Questionnaire research. Unfortunately, because of the current situation with the lockdown, I was unable to undertake survey in internet, workplace and in a shopping centre. However, an internet was a good solution to create an online survey and collected information and data. Secondary research. Secondary research contains YouTube clips which allowed to present several statements and speeches of local and also important people in Venice who fight against the cruise ships. Reports and journals were used to evaluate, analyze and discuss the current situation with big cruise ships and huge impacts on economy and culture of the historical city which is Venice. As a result of this, 2 different theories were applied: culture and economy, to take a deep look at the subject. Quantitative research. Several statistics such as number of tourists, cruise ships arriving, tourism spent and many more were investigated to present the most updated and reliable information. According to BBC News 2020, informs that Venice has a population of 261,000 people, which brings around 30 million tourists a year. Around 500 cruise ships dock in a city each year, damaging the fragile lagoon.
Local authorities say that cruises bring in the city's coffers almost $400 million a year, keeping the economy afloat. The city's opinion is divided.
As Mayhem 2013 believes that Venice will find a good solution to fight with the cruise ships. Local people say cruise ship passengers only come for a few hours and spend little in the shops, but generate rubbish and add to the congestion. They think also that cruise ships generate a number of waste streams that result so much discharges to the natural environment, including grey water. 2 million tourists arrived in Venice by cruise ships last year in 2019. According to Piran 2019, last year on Sunday morning, one of the massive cruise ship called MSC Opera crashed into dock and tourism boat. The cruise was approaching the cruise ship terminal in Venice to dock when it had a technical problem. Unfortunately, 4 people were injured in the collision. One of the witnesses, called Elisabetta Pascal, was watering plants on her terrace when she heard warning sirens and stepped out to see the crash. She added, "The bow of the ship smashed hard into the bank. Sirens were wailing so loud, it was very dramatic scene." Haynes 2016 states that for years residents have raised concerns about the effect that the massive ships have had on a frail city. So many damages caused by pollution, erosion on underwater foundation and potential future crashes for the city.
We were on a Royal Caribbean cruise ship holiday in Venice 2 years ago. When we arrived, it was completely chaos. I was shocked. We had to wait in lanes going into every single attraction. The city is absolutely touristed and overcrowded. We did the gondola ride, but we were annoyed by drunk tourists on some of them. The rides are not romantic at all, and every few guides actually sing like they show in a TV movie. I found it extremely disgusting that tourists don't respect local people and the historic city. In my opinion, Venice is overcrowded as Disney in the summer and holiday weekends. I have always been positive about the cruise ships, as I have been in many places, but I have to admit I have started to change my mind. The dramatic accident with the cruise ship last year made me realize that those big ships are dangerous for the city and people. Personally, I prefer the quiet places in Italy filled with locals and undiscovered by tourists.
Well, my experience with cruise ships is rich because I've already been on a cruise ship 10 times. A few years ago, me and my partner had the opportunity to visit Venice on a cruise ship. So we spent around 2 days in a beautiful city. During our visit, we visited historical monuments and tried local dishes. I know the current situation in Venice, as many local people protest against the cruise ships, but in my opinion, tourism supports economy in almost every known city in Italy. Most hotels, restaurants and attractions in Venice are the main revenue that incomes are for incoming tourists. As far as I remember, I spent over 200 euros for attractions, restaurants and souvenirs in 2 days.
According to International Transport Forum 2016, we can see the chart of the average size cruise ship call in Venice between 2001 and 2014. So in 2001 we can discover the average passengers per cruise ship call were over 1,500 passengers. Over, after 14 years later, the number doubled, with the result of over 3,500 passengers. 14 random people took in a survey questions that were prepared to get all the people's opinion about the situation with the cruise ships in Venice. 64.3% people said that they've already been to Venice. Only 35.7% people said no. The age of people who respond on a survey were 75.4% were people who are between 40 and 60. 21.4% is people over 60 plus, and only 7.1% of people were between 25 and 38. 35.7% of people said that they shouldn't ban the cruise ships to Venice. However, 64.3% people said yes. To sum up the research and investigation, I come to the conclusion that Venice has lost total control over the number of arriving cruise ships. The previous chart presented how many passengers come in one ship. The government ignores the opinions of permanent residents of Venice who are protesting against large ships. An example is that the last accident involving the cruise ship from which no conclusion have been drawn to reduce the influx of the cruise ships and the environmental hazard. There are several strategic recommendations that could be actioned to fight with the cruise ships. Venice City Council should require every tourist to pay €20 of city tax if they want to sightseeing. In this way, the city would be able to improve Venice and its facilities. Also, the cruise ships should pay an extra tourism tax, as they carry over 2,000 tourists every time. The reason for a larger contribution from tourists is to improve the quality of life of residents. Moreover, the city will be able to manage the flow of tourists. Another strategic proposal would be reroute those cruise ships to other less popular port places in Italy. Therefore, the city might reduce a huge number of tourists and make another big step to become more sustainable and responsible interaction with the environment to avoid degradation of the lagoon. A final recommendation will be completely ban the cruise ships to the famous city. As mentioned before, our locals have lots of battles for cruise ships to be banned, taking to the city street and canals, protest at the enormous vessels, clogging to the waterways and proving so much hazard. As a result of this, the ban could close the conflict between Venetians.